Woke up early, dawn's out shining. Coffee brewing, thoughts aligning. Business world keeps redefining. Success is more than just headlining.
Yes, folks, I'm Fred McMurray, and we're back with another episode of Pillars Principles with Ray Pillar and Jim Treleaven. Hello, gentlemen. How are we doing this week?
Good,
I'm
Fred.
doing
How are you?
fantastic. I'm sitting just south of Pittsburgh.
Okay, I'm not going to make a comment. All right, I will. What, they chase you out of the south side of Chicago? Never mind.
Yes.
Okay, so we've been working on last episode we talked about hiring and firing, and today we're going to talk about the inside of the hiring and firing, or the training and as one of you said, maintaining. So you hire a good employee. The first step is training, I think. So, Ray, what's been in past when you bring a new person in, besides utilizing the C word, culture, for those of you who aren't long-term listeners, besides the training them in the culture, although I'm assuming we're going to get to that, tell us your training techniques.
I'll say too that the term for all of this is now called onboarding.
Yes, that's true. True.
I'm old.
And that's probably more appropriate because
Yeah, I think so.
Onboarding, which is part of the training process. I think if you lack in that one particular area, you can have a lot of other things going for you, and if the employee is not properly trained, they're going to, not feel that they fit in. So I think that's a very important step, the training. And in my company, we've developed a lot of training aids that we use, videos to start with. Usually a field employee will start in-house with the videos, and with a mentor that they're able to talk to and ask questions about the videos. And then the next step after that is they're assigned as a third person into a team.
Okay,
and
wait, you've hit a lot there. I want to unpack that. First step is you guys have developed a video library for training.
Yes. Yes.
Any skits or real live demos there, or is it all just video?
There are demonstrations mostly on what to do, and yeah.
All right.
And also, I don't think we're utilizing this particular product any longer, but I did develop a book that pretty much highlighted all the products and materials that we use, so that they can easily identify them, because of it could be that the materials that we use, their prospective employee is not familiar with those items. So a picture book, essentially.
So you wrote a book about Pillars products.
Yes.
The Pillars Bible.
No, that there's no P. There's got to be a double P. We like the Pillars alliteration. All right. So you wrote a book of Pillars products. There's a video library on training, and then something that you said you assigned them a mentor. I heard that. So a mentor or a guide to help them understand the video library.
Someone to go to. Obviously you just can't let them flounder. Just here,
you can
watch this video and you're trained. They're going to have questions, and they need someone to go to answer the questions they may have.
Okay, so real quick question, because you've just gone somewhere that almost every job I've ever had, it was more of here's your desk, here's your computer, here's a book of stuff, go do. And I was kind of left to myself to figure it out. So this is kind of new to me, the idea of a mentor here, and so I really like. So you assign somebody a mentor to answer questions, help them through things, something like that.
Yes, and yeah, and you're absolutely right. I've had before being in business, I had jobs where basically, okay, you're hired. Okay, where's my desk? Well, it's the desk itself is still in storage. You'll have to move it out and then find a place to put it.
Exactly.
So I think my experiences have helped me to create better training for our employees.
All right, so I'm just going to hit it again for since I'm anal retentive. Um, there's the training program, which is self-paced from what so that way the person can
Yeah,
move.
absolutely.
They have a mentor to answer questions and help them through, and then it sounded like they become part of a working team, so that
Yes.
the team them trains them real world.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so uh, how do you find, and then I'm going to flip to Jim, how do you find people react to this training program?
Well, it's they become well trained. So I've never asked anybody to comment on it, but one of the things that's very interesting is that after they come back from a training session in the field, usually the two other people who are with that trainee uh, have a lot of comment on the.
Feedback from the team.
It's either wow, this person is a whirlwind, and she was able to work around us and do more than we even suggested, and or that person is worthless. you know,
Ah.
basically, and then of course we talk to the individual and find out uh, if there's anything we could do that change that opinion that these particular individuals have of her. So,
All right, so that to me, that's a very important thing. What you said is that now there's a feedback loop for what we'll call in the field training performance
yes.
that can be addressed. All right, so and that brings one other question is, since you've said this, I'm going to assume that in the time you own the business, you've had this happen on more than one occasion.
Pretty much all employees, unless they've had some sort of previous experience in that same business, will go through this training process. Yes.
So no, that's a given. But where I'm going at it is you've had a couple of occasions at least where there's been negative feedback from the training team about the individual. And
Yes.
so my question is what's that follow-up step?
Well, we try to evaluate that opinion. In other words, we don't necessarily take it as
Gold.
yeah, exactly. We find out what's going on. Maybe that person doesn't feel well and couldn't perform as she should, or whatever reason, and we at least don't fire her immediately.
All right, so
It's impending. We may stick her with another crew to see if that person works out after that. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, if the crew says, "Hey, forget this person," they don't know what work is. That then they're pretty much gone.
Toast. Okay, so there have been instances where there's been negative feedback from the team, and while you attempted to resolve the issues and embrace the employee, it has led to thanks, but no thanks. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
Pretty much. Yep.
All right. So let's go to Jim. Your experiences with training, same type of question. Tell us about your training experience.
As we talked about last week, the companies that I will be referencing that I ran are all generally software companies. So the first one, which I talked about a bit last week, Catalyst International, which was a software supply chain company with very large customers. So I'll just reference two kinds of employees coming in. The first is software developers, and generally they're hired. Why are you laughing?
Joke in my head. That's okay.
Generally, they are hired already knowing how to code. So, it might be a different language, but my beef with HR departments forever is that they will post a job saying you must be able to code in C++. You have experience. And my point is, if anyone's done C++, they can figure out Python in 2 weeks or less, 2 days. But anyway, so they come in with that skill. So the biggest training issue in that company is going to be on the application and the customers. So many come in not with deep experience in supply chain. And supply chain has a fair bit of complexity in terms of algorithms and warehouse management, and all kinds of regulations and so forth with regard to advanced shipping notices. So most of the training centers around that, the application of the software that they're going to be brought in to develop. The other area, which I'll talk about in the other company as well, is customer support. Very, very important in a software company. Now it's getting very annoying where you go and end up in a chat with a bot, which we're on a phone call with a bot, which either one just royally ticks me off. But anyway, so the people on the, and that's really important to the success of software businesses. This was a large publicly traded company. They have a lot of training to do because they're not coming in with knowledge of either the product. Generally, they're not coders. So they have to be trained. They might have customer support experience, the customer support software that's being used, so they know how to use it. The knowledge base exists on the support software. There's escalation processes, all of that. Plus, they have to have training on the product and the application. So that's very important early on. The other company I'll talk about, which is a slightly different situation, is a small company that did electronic logging devices, which all truck drivers need to use. Tablet, smartphone to actually track through the GPS where they are, how long they've been driving, what the mileage is on the engine. It's a pretty cool application, but a very small company. So the sales piece was through resellers, so not direct employees. So there was sales training for the resellers and their employees on the product. Now, those resellers all sold into the trucking industry, so they knew the space. But this is a pretty complex product, so it took some time to do training for them on how the product worked. That, in the second piece, is the regulations surrounding that came out of the Department of Transportation. Now, so the support area for them was offshored, so to the Philippines. So now you have to train the staff on the help desk in the Philippines, and this sounds almost impossible. Turns out it was not so bad. You have to train them on all the regulations because they're going to get calls. They're supporting thousands of truck drivers. They're going to get calls from truck drivers that says, I've driven this far today. How much more can I go? To uses of the application, like I forget my password. So there's a pretty broad range of application-specific training as well as regulation training. I would have thought that would have been next to impossible. Turns out they got to be really good at it fairly quickly. We had to supply them with a pretty good knowledge, easy to look up knowledge base and so forth. But it worked. The last one I'll mention is, because you guys raised it earlier, and that is mentoring. neither of those companies did that. But my daughter works for a very large sports broadcasting company, and they have a very detailed mentoring process, which helped her a lot when she first started there. So,
all right. So you hit a lot of you. Any of our listeners know from any of the shows I've been on, you have a very long tech background, and so you asked me why I was smiling earlier. There was the old joke of somebody asks a programmer how long it will do, and he gives them a time, and they say, "Well, what if we added 2 programmers and the developer doubles the time?" And they said, "What about 4?" And they double the time again, and they say, "What if I added 20 of them in there?" And the person says, "It'll never get done because that many developers can never agree on anything." So
there was a famous Harvard Business Review article in the 80s called The Mythical Man Month, which modeled and surveyed that, which was up to a point that you can do better, but after that, things get worse.
and dealing with software developers and tech folk, yeah, they're all passive aggressive. I know I used to be. Now I'm just aggressive. So I have an issue there, but you hit application knowledge, customer service, and sales knowledge. So there's 3 different training areas. And I can tell you with respect to technology, as somebody who gets to at times call up and deal with tech support for ISPs, many tech companies are woefully failing in that application knowledge for their customer service. Sometimes I think the incorrect knowledge rate, let's put it this way, there have been times where I've had to call 4 different times to get to somebody who knew what they were talking about. So in my head, they're woefully failing. How do you improve customer service application knowledge? Because I'm not sure which was worse, the AI bot who can't understand you or the human bot that's unwilling to listen to what you're saying.
Well, we almost always relied on humans. And so with humans, the one thing you can do to mitigate that issue is using customer service software, and there are a bunch of different kinds that actually capture the knowledge base. So when the customer service rep gets a question, it's very easy for them to look up when that question came up earlier and what to do about it. So that's one solution. The other one is you just sometimes actually send them out to customer locations, which is not a bad idea, to see what real users look like, the kinds of issues they face. So there's a number of things you can do, but it is a challenge.
So I like that big. I actually, in a couple of jobs I had early on, got to go out with the quote grunt folk. The thing you did mention though that another something that kind of kicked in my head was the sales component and selling. Actually, no, I want to go back to you said truck drivers and dealing with overseas. And the differential between the two. And when I look at the whole having to deal with folks that don't understand technology, because truck drivers are not known to be high-tech folk. I flashed to an incident early in my career, or actually middle of my career, when I was on a consultant for a very large management of waste company, and I was dealing with AS400s, and I got a call from one of the dumps that the AS400 wasn't shooting out reports. And I started to walk the person through the knowledge base of what to do. And he said, "Son, we got a problem." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I can't read. I'm a garbage man." Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I got kudos because I basically had him do a 3-fingered salute to the AS400, and his report started printing out, and I got kudos the next day. But how do you deal with that real deep change between somebody's dealing with tech information and the client is non-technical? I see that all the time in web development and stuff like that, where tech support's going blah, 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 and it's just washing over the people, and they got no clue. So how do you make that better?
Well, you have to. Well, one is I talked about the knowledge base. That makes a big difference. The other is, and in the case of the ELD application, there were a finite number of questions that would come up. It was a pretty self-sufficient mobile app, not too complicated. So the kinds of questions you would get, I mean, ranging from, if the range would be forgot my password, all the way up to I'm connecting to my engine through Bluetooth and the connection's not going through. So we just train them on, the handful of most commonly asked questions and rely on, in that case, that worked. The supply chain company would get more complex questions, but the joke we would have about that was the Filipinos on the help desk were fluent in English, and about half the truck drivers were not. So there was a language issue, but it was the reverse of what you would expect.
Yeah, that's interesting.
No, that's about what I'd expect. Believe me, I know some of the folks that I represent, and yeah, tech they ain't good on. All right. So the last thing I want to hit, and then we're going to flip to the next topic, which is from training to maintaining. But you mentioned sales training, and how do you train somebody into being a good salesperson? Because what I found is either people have that gift or they don't, and nothing short of a gun to their head are going to make them a great salesperson. So how do you train salespeople?
Okay, that's a question that could take up 6 shows. But anyway, so in the case I was talking about, the resellers, they were responsible for training their salespeople in sales. We mostly focused on the product, and they knew the space, so that wasn't a big deal. Now, going back to, and I'll do a couple of stories. One is, I've been teaching for 12 years now. I've had several thousand students. I have asked them, and they're graduate business school students, how many of them expect to go into sales? I am up to 12. And then I point out to them, how many of you plan to go in investment banking? How many of you plan to go into consulting, McKinsey or a Big Four, whatever it might be? And I rattle off a bunch of applications, and I say, okay, pretty much all of you have raised your hands, and I will make the comment that you will all be going into sales at some point.
Amen.
In your career, which is absolutely true. I mean, in the computer science department, not as likely, but in the business school for sure. So, and then I tell them the story of, I was an engineer originally designing computers and went back to work for IBM where I'd been before in sales, which for an introverted engineer was a shock to my system. And the IBM sales training was rigorous, 6 weeks, often residential. I mean, they beat the crap out of you. And I tell the students it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't particularly like it, but anyway, but there are some key sales skills that are sometimes counterintuitive. For example, most of the students or most people going into sales think they're the ones that have to talk the most. And it turns out that they're the ones who have to talk the least. You're much more effective at sales if you can get information from the prospect or the client that lets you better understand what the particular application or need is. Then you can pitch the parts of your product or service that can best fit that need. So we spend a lot of time on questioning, active questioning, passive questioning. There's all kinds of techniques around questioning that are very important. And that, I would argue, is the most important. The rest could take the rest of the day.
Okay. And to me, I always know when I win, when somebody says, that's a really good question. I've never thought of that before.
You got it.
I just staked a claim to some of the ground in their brain. So Ray, I want to flip back to you on this, and then we're going to go to maintaining. But because you and I didn't touch on sales training. How's your organization is not a $50 million company, at least not yet. We're working on it. But how does sales training differ for your organization compared to a big tech company?
Well, the field employees are not necessarily trying to make a sale, but they are definitely trying to maintain the client. In other words, keep the client from quitting. And one of the things that is not always apparent on an interview is personality. How is that person going to react in front of our client? And that can be anywhere from terrible to our clients love that particular person, always demands that they clean their home. So it can and it's also something you cannot train for. It's like trying to find a good salesman. They're very rare. There's a popular radio show I listen to, and I get annoyed at this particular commercial, but I assume it's correct. He basically starts out by saying that 90% of all salespeople have never read a single training in a book in sales and how to make sales, and the rest of them and another 90% never ask for the sale. So,
The last one's really important.
And I can definitely see that, but yeah, I think personality is one of the things that our field people have to have. I do know that a lot of our clients look forward to our teams coming over. Some of them are retired, and basically they don't see anybody for a whole week or 2 weeks. And they really look forward, and they really treat the employees very well, sometimes even feeding them lunch and everything. I'm not saying this is always true or is something that our clients should do, but definitely it becomes a thing with them. And of course our employees look forward to going to that particular client as well. So yeah, you can't train.
All right, so I got one last a comment and like both your feedback. Lately on LinkedIn, I seem to see a whole lot of invites, and when I accept, it's an immediate sales pitch. And I actually had a female CEO come at me, and I accepted the invite, and the initial response was a sales pitch. And if you just give me 30 minutes of your time. Now, if I responded to everybody who wanted 30 minutes of my time to listen to their sales pitch, we'd never be able to schedule a pre-record or recording for Pillars Principle, because I'd literally lose a week and a half a month. And
or you'd have to live to be 150.
Exactly. And my comment back, I said, I have a question for you. I said, how often does this immediate pitch work? And she acknowledged very, very seldom. I said, who's teaching you this? And it turns out there were, some of these LinkedIn marketing firms that using these tools and things like that. And my comment to her was, a small business owner does not want to get it pitched right away. There is a relationship that needs to be built before somebody's going to sign on the line.
Absolutely.
Both responses.
You have to break down that wall as soon as you meet that person. Now we're talking true sales from my perspective is by the inside employees, the managers who go out and do the interview with the new client, prospective new client. So definitely when I was doing those, I noticed immediately that there is a wall that needs to be broken down, and you need to find common ground.
Yep.
An example of that is if I walked into a home and I saw a piano with music sitting out on it, I'd mention something. Oh, do you play the piano? You know, you need to find something besides walking in and saying, yeah, we can do this for $100. You know, the client will say, thanks, I'll hire my neighbor for 50. You know, so yeah, common ground is very important, and you just can't break into the sale.
Yep.
Any further thoughts, Jim?
No, I would agree. I mean, that's part of the questioning part too, is that, I mean, putting aside what Ray talked about in terms of the initial approach based on no information, but if you start selling without talking and asking questions, you'll run into the same issue for sure.
All right, good. I'm glad to know I'm not, alone in my loathing of the immediate, I can help you with this, even though I have no clue anything about you. All right.
Correct.
We'll be back.
Woke up early, dawn's out shining. Coffee brewing, thoughts aligning.